Hello there, and welcome to 100 Facts Before Sleep. Tonight, we drift back beyond the reach of history into the realm of myth. We will explore the very beginning, the stories of the Greeks. It began not with light, but with chaos, a quiet, formless void. From this, the first gods emerged, the Titans, who were the raw, primal forces of the earth, the sky, and time itself. Every story of a hero, every quest, and every monster begins with these ancient foundational tales. They are the origin story of the Western mind. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to subscribe or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. For now, just breathe. Let your eyes grow heavy, and let the quiet wonder of these ancient myths cradle your thoughts. Let's begin. Fact 1. The beginning was not a sound, but a silence. Before the light of Olympus, before the seas or the sky, there was only chaos. This was not a state of disorder as we use the word today, but rather a vast, formless, and fathomless void. It was the primordial gap, a quiet emptiness that held the potential for everything. Chaos was not a god who thought or acted, but rather the very first condition of the universe. From this gentle, gaping nothingness, the first true entities, the protogenoi, or primordial gods, began to uncurl. Imagine the earth itself, Gaia, simply appearing, a solid foundation in the endless void. Imagine Tartarus, the great pit, a deep and shadowed counterpart, and Eros, the principle of love and attraction, not as a mischievous cherub, but as the fundamental force that would bind the universe together. Nyx the night and Erebus the darkness also emerged from this great sleepy void. Chaos was the cosmic womb, the quiet, dark theater before the very first light was lit. It is the deep breath the universe took before the story began. Fact 2. From the heart of chaos, the first foundation emerged. This was Gaia, the earth. She was not just the soil, the rocks, and the mountains. She was a conscious, breathing, and deeply powerful entity. Gaia was the ultimate mother, a nurturing and stable presence in the formless void. She was the stage upon which the entire grand drama of mythology would be set. But she was lonely, and so, from her own being, without a partner, she gave birth to a perfect equal to cover her. This was Ouranos, the starry sky. She also brought forth the mountains, the Aurea, and the sea, Pontus. Gaia, the earth, gazing up at Ouranos, the sky, became the first great couple. Their union was the beginning of the world as we know it, a cycle of rain and growth, of earth and sky. But Gaia's story is also one of profound sorrow. She was a mother who loved her children, and when her husband became a tyrant, it was her quiet, patient, and earthy anger that would set in motion the very first rebellion and the dawn of a new age. Fact 3. Ouranos was the sky, the starry mantle that Gaia created to cover herself. He was the first ruler of the cosmos, the first to hold the title of king. In the beginning, his union with Gaia was fertile and productive, bringing forth the first generations of divine beings. But Ouranos was a flawed and cruel ruler. He grew to despise his own children. When Gaia gave birth to the one-eyed Cyclopes and the 100-handed Hecatoncheires, Ouranos was repulsed by their monstrous forms. He feared their strength and the potential threat they posed to his rule. So, he did a terrible thing. He took his children and thrust them back into the womb of Gaia, the earth, imprisoning them deep within her. This caused Gaia immense physical pain and emotional anguish. Uranos, the beautiful starry sky, had become a tyrant, a suffocating blanket that refused to let the new generation be born. His cruelty was the first great crime of the gods, a crime that would not go unanswered, as the earth itself began to plot against the sky. Fact 4. The most famous children of Gaia and Uranos were the 12 Titans. These were not the savage monsters they are sometimes portrayed as, but the first true pantheon of gods. They were the raw, primal forces of the universe, the concepts that held the world together. There were 6 brothers and 6 sisters. Oceanus was the great encircling river that surrounded the world, and his sister wife Tethys was the mother of all the rivers and springs. Hyperion was the Titan of light, the father of the sun, moon, and dawn. His wife Thea was the lady of sight and the shining blue of the sky. Coeus was intellect, and his wife Phoebe was prophecy. Then there was Iapetus, the father of Prometheus and Atlas, who represented mortality, Krios, the titan of the constellations, and Themis, who was divine law and order, and Mnemosyne, who was memory itself. But the youngest and most ambitious of all the titans was Kronos, the god of time, who watched his father's cruelty and listened to his mother's whispers of rebellion. Fact 5. Gaia could no longer bear the pain of her imprisoned children. From her own depths, she forged a new metal, impossibly hard, called adamantine. From this, she fashioned a great, curved sickle. She gathered her Titan children and pleaded with them to help her stop their father's tyranny. But they were all afraid, all except one. Kronos, the youngest, stepped forward, his heart filled with ambition and resentment. That night, when Uranos, the sky, descended to embrace Gaia, the earth, Kronos lay in wait. He took the great sickle and, in one terrible act, he unmanned his father, severing his connection to the earth forever. Uranos retreated, a wounded and distant sky, his rule over. Kronos, the new king, cast his father's severed members into the great sea. From the drops of blood that fell on the earth, the vengeful furies and the warlike giants were born. And from the white foam that churned in the sea, a new, different kind of power emerged. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, born not of order, but of violence and sea foam. Fact 6. With Uranos defeated, Kronos took the throne of the universe and married his sister, the gentle Titaness Rhea, goddess of generation. The era of their rule was known as the Golden Age. In this time, mortals lived like gods, without sorrow, toil, or the misery of old age. They lived in perfect peace and harmony, and the earth provided all they needed without effort. But this peaceful age was ruled by a king, consumed by a dark, secret fear. Kronos had learned from his father's fall, but he had not learned wisdom. He knew of the prophecy that, just as he had overthrown his own father, he was destined to be overthrown by his own son. He did not free his monstrous brothers, the Cyclopes and Hundred-Handers, from their prison in Tartarus, for he feared their power as much as Uranos had. He ruled a perfect world, but he was a paranoid king, a god of time who was, ironically, terrified of the future and what it would bring. Fact 7. The fear of the prophecy consumed Kronos entirely. His wife, Rhea, gave birth to their first child, Hestia. She was a beautiful, gentle goddess, but Kronos saw only a threat. To defeat the prophecy, he did the unthinkable. He seized the newborn infant and swallowed her whole, imprisoning her in his own divine stomach. Rhea was horrified, But the cycle continued. She gave birth to Demeter, who was also swallowed. Then Hera, then Hades, and then Poseidon. Each time, Rhea's joy turned to terror as her husband, the king of the gods, devoured their children, driven by his maddening paranoia. He believed he had outsmarted fate. By keeping his children within him, they could never rise against him. But all he had done was sow the seeds of his own destruction, for he had not counted on the grief and cleverness of a mother who had nothing left to lose. The god of time, who devours all things, had become literal in his terrible, tragic reign. Fact 8. When Rhea was pregnant with her 6th child, she could not bear the thought of losing another. She went to her parents, Gaia and Uranos, who, though distant, heard her plea. They helped her devise a plan. Rhea traveled to the island of Crete, and in the darkness of a deep cave, she gave birth to her son Zeus. She then took a large stone, the Omphalos stone, wrapped it in swaddling clothes, and presented it to Kronos. Blinded by his own fear and arrogance, he took the stone and swallowed it, believing it was his son. The trick had worked. Zeus was safe. He was raised in secret in that cave on Mount Ida, hidden from his father's eyes. He was nursed by the gentle goat Amalthea, and his protectors were the Kuretes, warrior spirits, who would clash their shields and spears, dancing and shouting whenever the baby cried, so that the sound of his wails would be drowned out and Kronos would never hear the future king who was growing stronger every day. Fact 9. Once Zeus reached manhood, he returned to confront his father. With the help of the Titaness Metis, goddess of cunning, he procured a potion. Disguised, he served it to Kronos, who drank it down. The potion worked, and Kronos was overcome with nausea. First, he vomited up the Omphalos stone, and then, one by one, he disgorged his children, who were now fully grown and furious. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all freed at last. Zeus and his siblings, the new gods, immediately declared war on Kronos and the older Titans who supported him. This was the Titanomachy, the War of the Titans, a cataclysmic conflict that lasted for 10 long years and shook the very foundations of the cosmos. The new gods fought from Mount Olympus, the old from Mount Othrys. The war was at a stalemate until Zeus, guided by Gaia, descended into Tartarus and freed the Cyclopes and the 100-handers. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forged for him his greatest weapon, the lightning bolt. With this new power, the Olympians finally cast down the Titans, imprisoning them in the darkness of Tartarus forever. Fact 10. After the Great War, the universe was theirs, but it needed a ruler. The 3 victorious brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, had to decide how to divide their new kingdom. They chose not to fight amongst themselves, as their father had, but to leave it to fate. They drew lots to determine their domains. Zeus, perhaps by luck, or perhaps by destiny, drew the long straw. He was given the vast, open sky, and with it, he became the king of all gods and mortals, the ruler of Mount Olympus. Poseidon, the second brother, drew the lot for the sea, becoming the master of all oceans, rivers, and the unpredictable, deep waters. The third brother, Hades, drew the shortest and most solemn lot. He was given the Underworld, the vast, unseen kingdom beneath the earth, where all mortal spirits would one day go. The earth itself was left as common ground for all, though Zeus, as king of the sky, held ultimate sway. This division of power, this great lottery, established the new order of the Olympians. the pantheon that would rule for the rest of mythology. Fact 11. The new rulers of the cosmos were the Olympians. While we often speak of 12, the core of this family began with the 6 children of Kronos and Rhea. There was Zeus, the new king, Hera, his sister and queen, Poseidon, lord of the sea, and Hades, king of the unseen realm, and the 2 gentle sisters, Demeter, who commanded the harvest, and Hestia, the quiet goddess of the hearth. These 6 were the first generation, but they were soon joined by the children of Zeus, who cemented the new power of Olympus. There was Athena, born from his mind, Apollo and Artemis, the divine twins, Ares, the god of war, Hephaestus, the smith, Hermes, the messenger, and Dionysus, the god of wine. Together, this family, in all its power, its flaws, its loves, and its jealousies, represented a new kind of rule. It was not the raw primal force of the Titans, but a rule of complex personalities, of order, of civilization, and of the very passions that define the human world. Fact 12. Zeus was the king of the gods, and his domain was the vast and open sky. From his throne on Mount Olympus, he was the ultimate arbiter of justice, the keeper of oaths, and the one who maintained the order of the cosmos. His symbols were the mighty thunderbolt, forged by the Cyclopes, which gave him undisputed power, and the eagle, the majestic bird that flew higher than all others. He was the great protector of kings, of hospitality, and of the sacred bonds of family. But Zeus was not a perfect king. He was as vast and as changeable as the sky he ruled. One moment, he was a wise and just father, and the next, he was a tempest of rage or desire. His countless affairs with goddesses, nymphs, and mortal women became the source of countless myths and the cause of endless trouble with his wife, Hera. He was a god of profound contradictions, a symbol of supreme order, who was himself ruled by his own chaotic passions. Fact 13. Hera was the queen of the gods, the sister and wife of Zeus. Her domain was not the earth or sky, but the sacred institutions of marriage, family, and childbirth. She was the great patroness of wives and the fierce protector of the marriage bond. Her symbols were the beautiful, vain peacock, whose feathers were said to hold the eyes of her watchful servant Argus, and the pomegranate, a symbol of fertility and marital fidelity. Hera was a goddess of immense dignity, power, and regal beauty. But her story is one of tragedy. She was married to a husband she could not trust, and her power as queen was constantly undermined by Zeus's infidelities. This turned her into a figure of profound jealousy and vengeance. She did not, and could not, punish Zeus for his actions. Instead, her rage was directed at the women he pursued and the innocent children he fathered, such as Heracles. Her story is a quiet, somber one, that of a queen who, in protecting the sanctity of marriage, was herself trapped in a loveless one. Fact 14. Poseidon was the brother of Zeus, and the god who ruled the vast, untamed sea. After drawing his lot, he became the master of all oceans, the one who held the power of earthquakes, and the creator of the first horse. His symbol was the trident, a 3-pronged spear with which he could shake the earth and stir the seas into a furious storm. Poseidon was a god of deep, elemental power, as changeable as the waters he controlled. He could be calm and serene, granting safe passage to sailors, but his temper was legendary. When angered, he was a force of pure, destructive rage, his storms sinking fleets and his earthquakes toppling cities. He built a magnificent silent palace of coral and gems beneath the waves, where he lived with his wife, the sea nymph Amphitrite. Yet, like his brother Zeus, he was restless, and his own affairs and rivalries, especially his bitter contest with Athena for the city of Athens, shaped the stories of many heroes. Fact 15. Hades, the eldest son of Kronos, drew the most somber lot. The Underworld. He became the king of all that lies beneath the earth, the master of the dead, and the god of the unseen. He was not the god of death itself that was Thanatos, but rather the stern, quiet, and just ruler who received all mortal souls after their lives had ended. His realm was a gray, misty, and silent place. Hades was often feared by mortals who would not even speak his name, calling him Pluton, the rich one, because all the precious metals of the earth were also his. He was not evil. However, he was simply inflexible, his one great law that no soul who entered his kingdom could ever leave. His greatest symbol was the Helm of Darkness, a helmet of invisibility forged by the Cyclopes, which allowed him to move unseen. He rarely left his shadowy kingdom, preferring its quiet and order to the chaotic drama of Olympus. Fact 16. Hestia was the firstborn child of Kronos and Rhea, and therefore the first to be swallowed and the last to be freed. This made her, in a beautiful paradox, the first and the last. She was the goddess of the hearth, the home, and the sacred central fire. Hestia was the most gentle, peaceful, and unchanging of all the Olympians. While her siblings were embroiled in wars, scandals, and power struggles, Hestia remained a quiet, virgin goddess, dedicated to her duty. She represented the center of every home, the fire that cooked the food, provided warmth, and was the focal point of all family ritual. Every city in Greece had a public hearth where a sacred fire burned for Hestia, and a portion of every offering was given to her first. She was so pure and so beloved that she gave up her own seat on the Olympian council, some say to Dionysus, simply to avoid conflict. She was the silent, warm, and stable heart of the entire Greek world. Fact 17. Demeter was the goddess of the harvest, of agriculture, and of all the good, rich grain that fed the mortal world. She was the force that made the seeds sprout, the wheat ripen, and the seasons turn in their proper order. She was a kind, nurturing goddess, a true earth mother, and she was beloved by farmers and all who lived by the land. But Demeter's central myth is one of profound grief. Her entire world revolved around her daughter, Persephone. When her daughter was stolen by Hades and taken to the underworld, Demeter's sorrow was so immense that it blotted out the world. She neglected her duties, and in her grief, she caused a terrible, endless winter to fall upon the earth. The crops died, the land grew barren, and mortals starved. This gentle goddess, when broken by loss, showed that she held the power of life and death over all humanity. Her story is a deep, earthy reminder of the unbreakable bond between a mother and child. Fact 18. The birth of Athena was a testament to her unique nature. Zeus, the king of the gods, learned of a prophecy that his first wife, Medes, the goddess of cunning, would bear a child more powerful than he. Fearing this, he tricked Medes and swallowed her. But the child, already conceived, continued to grow within him. Soon, Zeus was struck by a splitting headache, a pain so immense he roared for his son Hephaestus, the divine smith. Hephaestus came with his axe and struck Zeus's head open, and from the wound, Athena emerged. She was not a baby, but a fully grown woman, dressed in shining armor and letting out a fearsome battle cry. She was the goddess of wisdom, of strategic warfare, of crafts, and of civilization. She was her father's favorite, a goddess of the mind, born not from a womb, but from the very thoughts of the king. Her symbols became the wise, all-seeing owl and the olive tree, her gift of peace to the city that would bear her name. Fact 19. Apollo was the god of almost everything that was civilized and beautiful. He was the son of Zeus and the Titaness Leto, and the twin brother of Artemis. His domains were vast. He was the god of the sun and light, of music and poetry, of medicine and healing. But he was also the god of prophecy, and his voice was the most revered in the ancient world. His greatest shrine was at Delphi, a place mortals considered the very center of the world. Here, a priestess known as the Pythia would breathe in sacred vapors and speak his divine and often cryptic prophecies. Apollo was the picture of youthful, golden beauty, and his symbols were the lyre, which he played with unmatched skill, and the bow and arrow, which he used to bring healing, or a sudden, clean plague. He represented the Greek ideal of harmony, order, and reason, the shining counterpart to the wildness of other gods. Fact 20. Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo, the goddess of the hunt, the moon, and the wild, untamed places of the earth. She was the protector of young maidens and wild animals. Where her brother represented the light of the sun, she was the quiet, silver light of the moon. As a child, she asked her father, Zeus, to grant her a single wish, to remain a maiden forever, free from the bonds of marriage, and to live in the forests and mountains. Zeus agreed, and she became a fierce, independent goddess, a mistress of her own destiny. She was often depicted with her silver bow and a quiver of arrows, accompanied by her sacred deer and a band of loyal nymphs. Artemis was a goddess of contrasts. She was the loving protector of the wild, the gentle bringer of childbirth, but she was also a cold and ruthless huntress who would fiercely punish any mortal, man or woman, who disrespected her or her vows. Fact 21. Ares was the god of war, the son of Zeus and Hera. But where Athena represented the strategy, wisdom, and civilized aspects of warfare, Ares was its dark and brutal heart. He was the god of bloodlust, of chaos, of the sheer, violent, and untamed rage of battle. He reveled in the noise of clashing spears and the groans of the dying. Unlike the other gods, who were masters of art and civilization, Ares was a being of pure, brute force. For this reason, he was deeply unpopular, both with mortals and with the other Olympians. Even his own father, Zeus, once told him that he was the most hateful of all the gods. His symbols were the spear, the helmet, and the vulture. He was often accompanied by his terrifying children, Phobos, fear, and Deimos, terror. His most famous affair was with Aphrodite, the goddess of love, a perfect, primal union of passion and conflict. Fact 22. Hephaestus was the god of the forge, of fire, of all metalworking, and the patron of craftsmen and smiths. He was the son of Zeus and Hera, though some stories say Hera bore him alone, in jealous response to Zeus's birth of Athena. Hephaestus was the only Olympian who was not physically perfect. He was born lame, with a deformed foot. Because of this, his mother Hera was ashamed of him and, in a moment of cruelty, cast him from Mount Olympus into the sea. He was rescued by sea nymphs and grew up to become a master craftsman, his skill unmatched. He eventually returned to Olympus and became the divine smith, forging Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, and the armor of the gods. In a cruel joke, he, the most unlovely of the gods, was married to Aphrodite, the most beautiful. He was a quiet, industrious, and long-suffering god. the hard-working, unglamorous, and essential creator behind the scenes of divine power. Fact 23. Aphrodite was the goddess of love, beauty, desire, and pleasure. Her origin is one of the great mysteries, told in two different ways. The first and most ancient tells that she was born from the violence of Kronos, rising fully formed from the sea foam, Aphros that gathered around the severed parts of Ouranos. This made her an ancient, primal, and dangerous force, older than the Olympians. The other story makes her the daughter of Zeus and a nymph named Dione, placing her neatly within the Olympian family. Whatever her origin, her power was absolute. No god or mortal, not even the mighty Zeus, was immune to her influence. Her great symbol was the cestus, a magical girdle that made her utterly irresistible to all who saw her. Her other symbols were the gentle dove, the rose, and the swan. She was married to the forge god Hephaestus, but she famously had a long and passionate affair with Ares, the god of war, a union that represented the eternal, dangerous link between love and conflict. Fact 24. Hermes was the god of boundaries and transitions, the great messenger of the Olympians. He was the son of Zeus and a nymph, and he was a trickster from the day he was born. As an infant, he famously stole a herd of cattle from his brother, Apollo, and invented the lyre from a tortoise shell to appease him. Hermes was the god of everything that moved between worlds. He was the patron of travelers, of merchants, of thieves, and of public speakers. He was the god of the quick, cunning word. But his most solemn duty was that of the psychopomp, the guide of souls. It was his gentle, quiet duty to lead the spirits of the dead from the world of the living down to the shores of the underworld. His symbols were his winged sandals, the talaria, which gave him impossible speed, and his herald staff, the caduceus, a winged staff entwined with two serene, balanced serpents. Fact 25. Dionysus was the god of wine, of revelry, of ecstatic madness, and of the theater. He was a latecomer to Olympus, the only major god to have a mortal mother. He was the son of Zeus and the princess Semele. When a jealous Hera tricked Semele into asking to see Zeus in his true divine form, the sight incinerated her. Zeus, in his grief, snatched the unborn Dionysus from her ashes and sewed the infant into his own thigh, bringing him to term himself. This double birth made Dionysus a god of the in-between, half mortal, half god, half man, half woman. His arrival was disruptive. He represented the wild, irrational, and ecstatic part of life that the orderly Greeks both feared and revered. He was followed by a wild troop of satyrs and maenads. He brought joy, liberation, and divine inspiration. But to those who rejected him, he brought a terrible, dismembering madness. Fact 26. The oracle at Delphi was the most sacred and revered place in the entire ancient world. It was a temple dedicated to Apollo, built on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, a place the Greeks believed to be the omphalos, or navel, the very center of the world. Here, a priestess, a local woman known as the Pythia, would deliver prophecies from the god himself. She would sit upon a tripod, and in a trance state, possibly induced by vapors rising from a chasm in the earth, she would speak. Her words were not her own, but the voice of Apollo. These prophecies were famously cryptic, full of riddles and double meanings, such as telling a king that if he went to war, a great empire would fall, never specifying that it would be his own. Carved above the entrance to the temple were the two great maxims of Greek thought: know thyself, and nothing in excess. Fact 27. The creation of mortals is a quiet, earthy story. After the Titans were defeated, the task of populating the world with creatures fell to two Titan brothers, Prometheus, forethought, and Epimetheus, afterthought. Epimetheus, the impulsive one, took on the task of giving the animals their gifts. He gave them fur, claws, wings, and strength. But he gave away all the best gifts with no thought for the future. When it was time to create humanity, he had nothing left to give. Prometheus, who loved the new, fragile creatures, stepped in. He took a piece of clay, and in the image of the gods themselves, he molded the first man. He made them walk upright, so that they might look up to the stars instead of down at the dirt. But they were weak, cold, and defenseless, cowering in the dark, and Prometheus's heart ached for them. He knew they needed one more gift, a gift that Zeus had forbidden. Fact 28. Prometheus, whose name means forethought, saw the plight of the mortals he had created. They were shivering in the darkness, helpless against the beasts and the cold. He looked to Olympus, where the gods kept their sacred fire, the symbol of their power, warmth, and knowledge. Zeus had explicitly forbidden giving this gift to humanity, wishing to keep them weak and subservient. But Prometheus, in his great love for his creations, chose to defy the king of the gods. In an act of quiet, divine theft, he stole a glowing ember from the hearth of Olympus, hiding it in the hollow of a giant fennel stalk. He brought this fire down to earth and gave it to mortals. With it, he gave them not just warmth, but the power to forge tools, to build cities, to cook food, and to gather in communities. He gave them the spark of civilization itself, knowing full well that his act of compassion would bring upon him a terrible and eternal punishment. Fact 29. Zeus was enraged by Prometheus's trickery and his gift of fire to mortals. His punishment for the Titan was swift and unimaginably cruel. He had Prometheus taken to the Caucasus Mountains and chained to a great rock. There, he was left, exposed to the wind, the sun, and the ice. But the true horror of the punishment was a daily one. Every single morning, a giant eagle, the emblem of Zeus, would fly down to the chained Titan and feed on his liver. Because Prometheus was immortal, his liver would regenerate completely every night, only for the eagle to return the next day and begin the torment anew. For thousands of years, Prometheus endured this silent, unending agony, his only crime being that he loved humanity too much. His suffering became a symbol of noble defiance, of the endurance of the mind against the tyranny of power. He was eventually, centuries later, freed by the hero Heracles. Fact 30. Zeus was not content to punish only Prometheus. He decided to punish humanity as well, for accepting the stolen fire. He ordered the god Hephaestus to mold a new creature from clay, a beautiful woman, the first woman. All the gods gave her gifts. Aphrodite gave her beauty, Hermes gave her a cunning and deceitful mind, and Athena taught her crafts. They named her Pandora, meaning all-gifted. Zeus then presented this beautiful creation to Prometheus's simple-minded brother, Epimetheus, as a bride. He also gave her a wedding gift, a beautifully sealed jar, later misinterpreted as a box. He warned her never to open it. But Zeus, a god of cunning, knew that in giving her curiosity, he had sealed humanity's fate. Pandora, unable to resist, eventually opened the jar, and from it, a dark cloud of all the evils of the world flew out. Sickness, sorrow, toil, hatred, and death, spreading across the earth. She closed the lid, but it was too late. Only one thing was left, trapped at the bottom: Elpis, the spirit of hope. Fact 31. The Underworld, the kingdom of Hades, was not the fiery hell of other traditions. It was a vast, gray, and joyless kingdom, a quiet destination for all mortal souls, whether they were good or bad. It was a place of shadows and mist, where the spirits of the dead existed as faint, whispering echoes of their former selves. The Greeks envisioned it as a place beneath the earth, its borders defined by a series of great, dark rivers. To enter, all souls had to make the same journey. They would be led by the god Hermes to the banks of the river Styx, where they would meet the silent ferryman. The land of the dead was a place of finality, ruled by a stern but just king. Its greatest horror was not fire, but its endless gray monotony and the profound, aching sadness of forgetting and being forgotten by the warm world of the living above. Fact 32. The geography of the underworld was defined by 5 great rivers that flowed through its dark landscapes. Each one represented a different aspect of death. The most famous was the river Styx, the river of hatred. This was the great boundary between the living and the dead, and the river upon which the gods themselves swore their most unbreakable oaths. A god who broke an oath on the Styx would be cast into a coma for 9 years. Then there was the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Souls who were destined to be reincarnated would drink from its waters to forget their past lives. The Acheron was the river of woe or pain, the river that Charon the ferryman would cross. The Phlegethon was the river of fire, though it was not a river of punishment, but a river of fire that flowed through the deepest parts of the realm. Finally, there was the Cocytus, the river of wailing, whose cold, slow waters were the sound of all the grief in the world. Fact 33. Charon was the ancient, silent, and grim ferryman of the underworld. His duty was to carry the newly departed souls across the river Styx, or perhaps the Acheron, to the gates of Hades' kingdom. He was depicted as a gnarled, unkempt old man with a fierce, watchful eye. But Charon did not work for free. His payment was a single obol, a small coin, which was to be placed in the mouth of the deceased by their family before burial. This practice was one of the most sacred and important funeral rites. For a soul who arrived at the shore without the coin, or for a body that had not been properly buried, the fate was a terrible one. Charon would refuse them passage, and they would be forced to wander the gray, misty shores of the river for 100 years as a restless, unhappy spirit, trapped between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Fact 34. Guarding the gates of Hades' kingdom, ensuring that all souls could enter but none could ever leave, was the monstrous hound, Cerberus. He was not an ordinary dog, but a terrifying beast, the child of the monsters Typhon and Echidna. He was most famously depicted as having 3 massive, snarling heads, though some accounts gave him 50 or even 100. He had the tail of a serpent and, in some tellings, a mane of writhing snakes. Cerberus was a perfect and terrifying guard. He was gentle and welcoming to all the new souls who arrived, fawning on them as they passed through the gates. But if any soul, or any living hero, should try to escape back to the world of light, the dog's nature would turn, and he would become a savage, inescapable force, tearing the fugitive to pieces. His very presence was a symbol of the finality of death. Fact 35. Once a soul had crossed the river and passed the gaze of Cerberus, they would arrive at the great fields of the dead. But first, their life had to be judged. This task fell to 3 demigods, mortals who had been so wise and just in their own lives that they were given this eternal solemn duty. They were King Minos of Crete, his brother Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus of Aegina. These three judges would sit and listen to the deeds of every soul. They were incorruptible, and in the land of the dead, no lie could be told. They would weigh the good and the bad, the triumphs and the sorrows. And based on this final, perfect judgment, they would assign the soul to its final, eternal destination, sending it down one of three paths to its deserved afterlife, be it one of punishment, of neutrality, or of bliss. Fact 36. The judgment of the dead led to one of three final homes. The first, and most terrible, was Tartarus. This was not just part of the underworld, but a deep, dark pit as far beneath Hades as the earth is from the sky. This was a prison for the greatest villains and the enemies of the gods, like the Titans or Sisyphus, who endured eternal specialized torments. The second, and most common destination, was the Asphodel Meadows. This was a vast, gray, and neutral land where the vast majority of souls, those who had been neither truly good nor truly evil, wandered forever as aimless, fluttering shades. But for the rare, heroic, and virtuous few, there was a third path. This was Elysium, or the Elysian Fields. It was a place of eternal, peaceful bliss, a paradise where the sun always shone, and the heroes of old lived in quiet, happy rest, free from all toil and sorrow. Fact 37. The myth of Persephone is the story that gave the Greeks their seasons. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, and she was the embodiment of spring. She was a bright, happy maiden who loved to wander in the fields and gather flowers. One day, Hades, the lonely king of the underworld, saw her and was so struck by her beauty that he fell deeply in love. He burst up from the earth in his dark chariot, seized the terrified girl, and pulled her down into his kingdom to be his queen. Demeter was driven mad with grief. She searched the entire world for her daughter, and as she grieved, she neglected her duties. The earth grew cold, the crops failed, and a barren, deadly winter fell upon the world. Humanity was dying, and the gods of Olympus received no sacrifices. Demeter's love for her daughter had become a weapon that held the entire world hostage. Fact 38. Zeus finally had to intervene. He sent Hermes down to the underworld to command Hades to release Persephone. Hades, the quiet king, did not defy his brother. He agreed, but he was cunning. As Persephone was leaving, he offered her a single, shining pomegranate, the food of the dead. Persephone, who had refused to eat anything in her sorrow, was so hungry that she ate a few of the seeds, some say 3, some say 6. What she did not know was that this was a trick. Anyone who tasted the food of the underworld was bound to it forever. When Demeter learned of this, her joy turned to rage. A great compromise had to be made. Because she had eaten the seeds, Persephone would have to spend part of the year in the underworld as Hades' queen. For the month she was gone, Demeter would grieve, and the earth would be cold and barren. This was winter, but when her daughter returned to her, Demeter's joy would cause the earth to bloom. This was spring. Fact 39. The greatest of all Greek heroes was Heracles. He was a demigod, the son of Zeus, king of the gods, and a mortal woman named Alcmene. This divine parentage was both the source of his incredible, superhuman strength and the cause of all his suffering. Hera, the wife of Zeus, was consumed with a jealous rage against him from the moment he was born. She saw him as a living, breathing symbol of her husband's infidelity. She tried to kill him in his cradle by sending 2 great serpents to poison him, but the infant Heracles, already possessing immense power, simply woke up, laughed, and strangled the snakes, one in each hand. His entire life would be a struggle against the cruel whims of his divine stepmother. His strength tested not only against monsters, but against a fate that was determined to destroy him. Fact 40. Heracles grew into a mighty man, a hero of his people. He married the princess Megara, and they had several children. He was, for a brief time, truly happy. But the hatred of Hera was a patient, cold thing. She watched his happiness and decided to end it. She cast a spell of madness upon him, a dark and terrible illusion. In his delirium, Heracles no longer saw his loving wife and his children. He saw only monsters and enemies rushing to attack him. He fought back with all his superhuman strength, and when the madness finally lifted, he was left standing in a silent room covered in blood, having slaughtered his own family. The grief and guilt that washed over him were a burden greater than any he had ever carried. He was no longer a hero, but a monster in his own eyes, and he fled to seek atonement for his unspeakable crime. Fact 41. Desperate to purify his soul, Heracles went to the oracle at Delphi. The Pythia, speaking for Apollo, told him that his path to redemption lay in service. He was to travel to the kingdom of his cousin, King Eurystheus, and serve him for 12 years, performing whatever tasks the king set for him. Eurystheus, a weak and fearful man who was secretly influenced by Hera, was delighted at this. He devised a series of 10, which later became 12, labors, a set of impossible and seemingly suicidal missions designed to kill the hero. These tasks would send Heracles to the very edges of the known world, pitting him against invincible monsters, divine beasts, and even the gods themselves. They were meant to be his doom, but instead they would become the framework of his legend, the very foundation of his immortality. Fact 42. The first of the 12 labors was a task of pure, brute strength. King Eurystheus ordered Heracles to kill and bring back the Nemean lion, a monstrous beast that was terrorizing the land of Nemea. This was no ordinary lion. It was a child of monsters, and its golden hide was impervious to all weapons. No spear, arrow, or sword could pierce its skin. Heracles hunted the lion and, upon finding it, shot it with his arrows, which simply bounced off harmlessly. He then drew his sword, which bent. Realizing that weapons were useless, Heracles cornered the lion in its cave. He blocked one entrance and entered through the other. Confronting the beast in the darkness, he abandoned his weapons and wrestled the lion, wrapping his immense arms around its neck, and with his superhuman strength, squeezing the life from it. He then used the lion's own razor-sharp claws to flay its hide, which he wore as his own impenetrable armor from that day forward. Fact 43. The second labor was a creature of a different kind, a test of ingenuity as much as strength. This was the Lernaean Hydra, a monstrous water serpent with many heads that lived in the swamps of Lerna. The Hydra was a child of Typhon, and its breath was a deadly poison. The true challenge of this beast was that for every one of its heads that was cut off, 2 more, even more venomous, would instantly grow back in its place. Heracles was not alone. He had the help of his nephew, Iolaus. As Heracles sliced off a head with his sword, Iolaus would immediately rush in with a burning torch and cauterize the bleeding stump, sealing the wound so that a new head could not grow. They worked together, one cutting and one burning, until only the central immortal head remained. Heracles cut this final head off and buried it deep under a heavy boulder, and his second labor was complete. Fact 44. Not all the labors were about killing monsters. The fifth labor was a test of a different kind of strength, endurance, and cleverness. King Eurystheus, intending to humiliate the great hero, ordered him to clean the stables of King Odysseus in a single day. This was a seemingly impossible task, not just because of the filth, but because of the sheer scale. King Odysseus owned more cattle than any man alive, and his massive stables had not been cleaned in over 30 years. The accumulation of filth was mountain high. Heracles, seeing the task, did not bend his back to a shovel. Instead, he used his wit. He struck a deal with Odysseus to receive 1/10 of the cattle if he succeeded. Then, he tore down the walls of the stable on 2 sides and rerouted the courses of 2 nearby rivers, the Alpheus and the Peneus. The powerful rivers flooded through the stables, washing away 3 decades of filth in a single powerful surge. Fact 45. The 11th labor sent Heracles to the very edge of the known world, to the garden of the Hesperides. His task was to retrieve the golden apples, a wedding gift from Gaia to Hera, which granted immortality. These apples were guarded by the Hesperides, nymph daughters of the evening, and more formidably, by Ladon, a great 100-headed dragon that never slept. Heracles did not know the way, and on his journey, he came across the Titan Atlas, who was enduring his eternal punishment, holding the entire sky upon his shoulders. Heracles, in a moment of cunning, offered to take the burden for a few minutes if Atlas, whose daughters guarded the apples, would fetch them for him. The weary Titan agreed. When Atlas returned with the apples, he declared he would take them to Eurystheus himself, happy to be free. Heracles, in a brilliant moment of deception, calmly agreed, but asked the Titan if he could just take the sky back for 1 second so he could adjust his cloak. The foolish Atlas did so, and Heracles, grabbing the apples, simply walked away, leaving the Titan once again trapped by the weight of the heavens. Fact 46. The 12th and final labor was the most terrifying of all. A task that no mortal had ever completed. Eurystheus, in his last, desperate attempt to destroy the hero, ordered him to descend into the underworld and bring back Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of Hades. Heracles journeyed to the land of the dead, a living man walking among the shades. He was so brave and so mighty that he did not try to steal the beast. Instead, he went before Hades, the king of the dead, and respectfully asked for permission to borrow his guard dog. Hades, impressed by his courage, agreed, but on one condition: Heracles had to subdue the monster with his bare hands, using no weapons. Heracles found the great beast, and in a final, terrible wrestling match, he used his lion skin to protect himself, and his great strength to overpower the hound. He dragged the beast, momentarily tamed, to the world of the living, presented it to the terrified Eurystheus, and then, as promised, returned the guardian to its rightful place at the gates of hell. His labors were complete. Fact 47. After completing his labors, Heracles' story was far from over. He lived a life of adventure, but his end was a tragic one. His second wife, Deianira, fearing he loved another, was tricked into giving him a cloak soaked in what she believed was a love potion. In truth, it was the venomous blood of a centaur Heracles had slain. When he put on the cloak, the poison began to burn his flesh, an agony so great that the hero, who had faced down gods and monsters, could not endure it. He built his own funeral pyre and ordered it lit. As the flames consumed his mortal body, his immortal part, his divine spirit, was saved. He was carried up to Mount Olympus in a chariot, finally free from the hatred of Hera. In a great act of reconciliation, she even gave him her daughter, Hebe, the goddess of youth, as his immortal wife. The hero who had suffered so much on earth was finally given peace, becoming a god himself. Fact 48. The great hero of Athens was Theseus. His most famous story begins with a dark tribute. Because of a past defeat, Athens was forced to send 7 of its noblest young men and 7 of its most beautiful young women to Crete every 9 years. There, they were sacrificed to a monster, the Minotaur, a terrifying creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull. This beast lived in the center of an unsolvable maze called the Labyrinth. Theseus, the brave son of the Athenian king, volunteered to go as one of the 7, vowing to his father that he would be the one to kill the monster and end the terrible tribute. He sailed to Crete, not as a victim, but as a champion, ready to face the beast in the darkness of its own home. Fact 49. The Minotaur was not born a monster, but made one by the hubris of a king. Its origin was a story of divine vengeance. King Minos of Crete, wishing to secure his throne, prayed to Poseidon to send him a sign of favor. Poseidon answered, sending a magnificent, pure white bull from the sea, with the understanding that Minos would sacrifice it in the god's honor. But Minos was overcome with greed. He saw the bull's beauty and decided to keep it, sacrificing a lesser animal from his own herd instead. Poseidon, enraged by this betrayal, did not punish Minos directly. In a far crueler act, he cursed the king's wife, Queen Pasiphae, with an unnatural and overwhelming desire for the white bull. The result of this cursed union was the Minotaur. Ashamed and terrified, Minos did not kill the beast, but instead ordered his master inventor, Daedalus, to build a prison for it, a prison from which it could never escape. Fact 50. That prison was the Labyrinth. It was not a simple maze, but a creation of genius and darkness, designed by the master inventor Daedalus. It was a twisting, turning, and shifting series of corridors, dead ends, and false passages, so complex that it was said to fold in on itself. Daedalus built it so cleverly that once inside, no one, not even its own architect, could find their way out. The very air of the labyrinth was one of confusion and despair. In the dark, windowless center of this great, impossible puzzle, King Minos kept his monstrous stepson, the Minotaur. There, the beast roamed the halls, waiting until the Athenian tributes were sent in, one by one, to become hopelessly lost in the darkness, and then, inevitably, hunted and devoured. Fact 51. When Theseus arrived in Crete, his bravery captured the attention of Princess Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos himself. She was a half-sister to the Minotaur, and she pitied the monster, but she fell instantly in love with the Athenian hero. She could not bear the thought of him being killed. She went to him in secret and gave him 2 gifts, gifts she had procured from the labyrinth's own creator, Daedalus. The first was a magic sword, strong enough to kill the beast. The second was a simple ball of thread. She told him to tie one end to the entrance of the labyrinth and to unspool the thread as he walked. Theseus did as she said. He entered the maze, the simple thread trailing behind him, found the Minotaur in the dark center, and with the magic sword, he slew the beast. While the other heroes would have been lost forever, Theseus simply followed the thread back out of the darkness and into the light, a hero. Fact 52. Before he left Athens, Theseus had made a promise to his father, King Aegeus. The ship that carried the tributes to Crete always flew black sails, a symbol of its mournful, doomed journey. Theseus promised his father that if he was successful, if he killed the Minotaur and returned alive, he would change the sails from black to white. His father, the old king, stood on the cliffs of Athens every day, anxiously watching the sea. Theseus, in his joy and excitement after defeating the monster and escaping with Ariadne, forgot his promise. As his ship approached the coast, it still flew the black sails of death. King Aegeus, seeing the sails, was overcome with a grief so profound that he believed his son was dead. He threw himself from the high cliffs into the sea below. That sea, in eternal memory of the fallen king, is called the Aegean Sea to this day. Fact 53. The creator of the Labyrinth, Daedalus, was a genius, the greatest inventor and craftsman of his age. But his genius had become his prison. After Theseus escaped, King Minos was furious, knowing that Daedalus must have helped. He imprisoned the inventor and his young son, Icarus, within the labyrinth itself. But for Daedalus, even an unsolvable maze was a puzzle he could best. He knew he could not escape by land or sea, so he decided to escape by the air. He began to gather all the feathers he could find, from birds that flew into the maze. Then, with beeswax and thread, he meticulously crafted 2 great pairs of wings, one for himself and one for his son. It was a masterpiece of impossible engineering, a way to cheat his prison and the very earth itself. Fact 54. When the wings were complete, Daedalus strapped them to his son's back and then to his own. Before they took flight, he gave Icarus a solemn warning. "Do not fly too low," he said, "or the mist from the sea will dampen your wings and weigh you down. And do not fly too high, or the heat from the sun will melt the wax." Icarus, his heart pounding with the excitement of flight, barely listened. They leaped from the labyrinth, and it worked. They were flying, soaring like gods above the sea and the land. But Icarus was overcome with the sheer, ecstatic joy of it all. He forgot his father's warning, and filled with youthful hubris, he began to fly higher and higher. Reaching for the Sunday, the inevitable happened. The sun's heat softened the wax, the feathers loosened, and the wings fell apart. Icarus, the boy who had touched the sun, plunged from the sky and into the sea, his dream ending in a tragic fall. Fact 55. The story of the hero Perseus begins with a cruel king and a fearful prophecy. Perseus was the son of Zeus and the mortal princess Danae. They had been set adrift in a chest and washed up on an island, where the local king, Polydectes, took them in. But as Perseus grew, the king came to desire his mother, and he saw the boy as an obstacle. To get rid of him, Polydectes commanded Perseus to bring him a gift, the head of Medusa. This was a suicidal mission. Medusa was one of the 3 Gorgon sisters, a monster so terrible that a single glance into her eyes would turn any living man to solid stone. The king laughed, believing he had sent the young hero to his death, but he had underestimated the favor that the gods held for the son of Zeus. Fact 56. The Gorgons were 3 monstrous sisters who lived at the edge of the world. 2 of them, Stheno and Euryale, were immortal, but the third, Medusa, was mortal. The story of her creation is a tragic one. She was once a beautiful maiden, a priestess in the temple of Athena, but she was violated by the god Poseidon within the temple itself. Athena, in a rage at her temple being desecrated, did not punish Poseidon. She punished Medusa. She transformed the maiden's beautiful hair into a nest of writhing, venomous snakes, and cursed her with a face so horrifying and a gaze so powerful that any who looked upon her would be petrified with terror and turned instantly to stone. Medusa became a monster of pure, agonizing loneliness, a tragic figure whose very appearance was a weapon of death. Fact 57. Perseus could not defeat such a monster with strength alone. He needed the help of the gods. And the gods, his family, answered. The cunning Hermes, his half-brother, came to him and gave him a pair of winged sandals, the Talaria, which allowed him to fly as fast as the wind. Hermes also gave him a sword of adamantine, the only blade sharp enough to cut through the Gorgon's scaly neck. His half-sister, the wise Athena, gave him her own shield, the Aegis, polished to a mirror-like sheen. She warned him never to look at Medusa directly, but to use the shield as a reflection, and from the nymphs, he received a magical cap, which was, in fact, the Helm of Darkness, borrowed from Hades, which would make him completely invisible. He was now a hero, equipped not with strength, but with divine gifts of speed, stealth, and wisdom. Fact 58. Guided by the gods, Perseus flew to the ends of the world. He found the Gorgon's lair, a desolate place littered with the stone statues of heroes who had failed before him. The monsters were asleep. Remembering Athena's warning, Perseus did not look at them. He used the polished shield as a mirror, his back to the sleeping beasts. Flying backward, guided by the reflection, he identified Medusa. He raised his adamantine sword, and, in one clean, swift motion, he beheaded her. From her neck, two magical creatures sprang forth, the children of her union with Poseidon, the winged horse, Pegasus, and the giant, Chrysaor. Perseus, his task complete, put the still dangerous head of Medusa into a special bag, put on his cap of invisibility, and, as the two immortal sisters woke, he flew away, unseen, victorious. Fact 59. The birth of Pegasus is one of the most beautiful images in all of mythology, a moment of pure magic born from an act of violence. When Perseus beheaded Medusa, her blood, which was the blood of a mortal woman mixed with the divine power of Poseidon, spilled onto the earth. From this union of earth and sea, two beings sprang forth, fully formed. The first was Chrysaor, a giant or a winged boar, a figure of strength. But the second was Pegasus, a magnificent pure white horse with great powerful wings. He was a creature of inspiration, a symbol of freedom and the poetic spirit. He stamped his hoof on the ground, and a spring of inspiration, the Hippocrene, burst forth on Mount Helicon, the home of the Muses. Pegasus, the winged horse, became the companion of heroes and the symbol of the soul's journey, a beautiful, pure creature born from the dark, tragic story of his mother. Fact 60. On his journey home, with the head of Medusa safely in his bag, Perseus flew over the coast of Ethiopia. There, he saw a beautiful young woman chained to a great rock by the sea. This was the princess Andromeda. Her mother, Queen Cassiopeia, had boasted that her daughter was more beautiful than the Nereids, the sea nymphs. This was an act of terrible hubris. The nymphs, enraged, complained to Poseidon, who sent a great sea monster, Cetus, to ravage the kingdom. An oracle declared that only the sacrifice of Andromeda would save the people. As Perseus flew by, the monster was rising from the waves to devour her. Perseus, struck by her beauty and her plight, landed. He fought the great beast, some say with his sword, and others, more cleverly, by pulling Medusa's head from the bag and turning the sea monster to stone. He freed Andromeda, married her, and returned with her to his home, a complete and triumphant hero. Fact 61. The quest for the Golden Fleece is the story of the hero Jason and a great, epic sea voyage. Jason was the rightful king of Iolcos, but his throne had been stolen by his uncle, Peleus. When Jason came of age to claim his birthright, Peleus, a cunning and ruthless man, pretended to agree. But he said that first, Jason must prove his worth by retrieving a legendary treasure, the Golden Fleece. This fleece was the hide of a magical, flying ram, and it was held in the distant barbarian land of Colchis, at the very edge of the Black Sea. It was guarded by a sleepless dragon and was considered impossible to retrieve. Peleus was sending Jason on a suicide mission, but Jason, young and brave, accepted the challenge and began to assemble the greatest crew of heroes the world had ever seen. Fact 62. To make the impossible journey to Colchis, Jason commissioned a ship unlike any built before. It was named the Argo, after its builder Argus, and it was the first great, long ship in history. It was a magical vessel. Athena herself had helped build it, and she set a piece of wood from the sacred, talking oak of Dodona into its prow, which could speak and give prophecies to the crew. The crew that Jason assembled was a who's who of the heroic age. They were called the Argonauts. They included the mighty Heracles, the master musician Orpheus, the divine twins Castor and Pollux, the sharp-eyed Lynceus, and many other kings and heroes. This was the original great team of heroes, a collection of all the greatest talents in Greece, united in a single magnificent ship, setting sail into the unknown for the greatest treasure in the world. Fact 63. When Jason and the Argonauts finally arrived in the kingdom of Colchis, they met their greatest ally and their most terrible foe, the Princess Medea. Medea was the daughter of King Aeetes, and she was a powerful sorceress, a priestess of the goddess Hecate. The goddess Hera, who favored Jason, conspired with Aphrodite to make Medea fall deeply, magically, and obsessively in love with the hero. This love consumed her. It made her betray her own family and her own country for him. Medea was a figure of immense power and dark knowledge. She knew the secrets of herbs, of magic, and of the forces that lay beneath the earth. Her love for Jason was all-powerful, and it would be the key to his success. But it was also a dangerous, possessive, and volatile fire that would one day burn them both. Fact 64. King Aeetes was furious at Jason's request for the Golden Fleece and gave him a series of impossible tasks to complete, tasks designed to kill him. First, Jason had to yoke a pair of fire-breathing bulls, the Chalcotauroi, and plow a field with them. Then, he had to sow that field with dragon's teeth. Medea, in her love, came to him in secret. She gave him a magical ointment that would make him fireproof, allowing him to tame the bulls. He plowed the field and sowed the teeth, but as he did, a terrible thing happened. From the furrows, a full army of Spartoi, skeleton warriors, sprang from the earth, their spears ready. Medea had given him a second piece of advice. Jason, as she instructed, threw a stone into the middle of the army. The warriors, confused and stupid, blamed each other for the stone and began to fight amongst themselves, slaughtering each other until none were left. Jason had succeeded, thanks entirely to Medea's magic. Fact 65. The story of Jason and Medea ends not in triumph, but in one of the darkest tragedies in all of Greek myth. After they escaped Colchis with the fleece, Medea helped Jason reclaim his throne, They were married and had 2 sons. But years later, Jason grew tired of Medea. He saw a chance for a new, more powerful alliance, and he abandoned Medea to marry a young Greek princess. This betrayal broke Medea. The love she had felt, so powerful and all-consuming, turned into an equally powerful and all-consuming hatred. She was a barbarian, a sorceress, and an outcast, and she had given up everything for a man who now cast her aside. Her revenge was absolute. She sent a poisoned robe to the new princess, which burned her and her father to death. And then, in her final, most horrific act of vengeance, she murdered her own 2 sons, the children she had with Jason, knowing that it was the only way to truly destroy him. She then escaped in a chariot drawn by dragons, a figure of terrible, tragic, and inhuman grief. Fact 66. The Trojan War, the greatest conflict in Greek mythology, was a 10-year war fought between the Greeks, or Achaeans, and the city of Troy. But it all began not with a battle, but with a party and a golden apple. At the wedding of the hero Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis, all the gods were invited except one, Eris, the goddess of discord. Enraged, she threw a golden apple into the middle of the party, inscribed with the words, "For the fairest." 3 goddesses immediately claimed it: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Zeus, refusing to judge, gave the task to a mortal, Paris, a handsome prince of Troy. Hera offered him power, Athena offered him victory in battle, but Aphrodite offered him the most beautiful mortal woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris, foolishly, gave the apple to Aphrodite. Soon after, he visited Sparta, and with Aphrodite's help, he abducted, or some say, eloped with Helen, the wife of King Menelaus. The war had begun. Fact 67. When Menelaus, the king of Sparta, discovered his wife Helen had been taken, he was enraged. He went to his brother, Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae. They immediately called upon all the kings and heroes of Greece to help them sail to Troy and bring Helen back. They were able to do this because of a quiet, clever oath. Years before, when Helen was still unmarried, her beauty was so great that dozens of kings and heroes vied for her hand. Her father, Tyndareus, was terrified that if he chose one, the others would unite and destroy him. On the advice of the cunning Odysseus, he made every suitor swear a sacred, unbreakable oath that they would all respect his choice, and, more importantly, that if any man ever tried to steal Helen from her chosen husband, they would all unite their armies and sail to his defense. Now, years later, that oath was called in, and the 1,000 ships were launched for Troy. Fact 68. The greatest warrior of all the Greeks, the key to their victory, was Achilles. He was the son of the hero Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis. Thetis, his mother, knew of a prophecy that her son would either live a long, quiet, and inglorious life, or he would live a short, glorious life and die in battle at Troy. Desperate to save him, she took him as an infant to the river Styx, the river of the Underworld, whose waters were said to make a person invulnerable. She held him by his tiny heel and dipped him into the sacred dark water. Every part of his body the water touched became as hard as a god's. But the one small spot on his heel, where her thumb and forefinger had held him, remained mortal. This was the one, single, fatal weakness of the otherwise invincible man, the famous Achilles' heel. Fact 69. The central story of the Iliad, the great epic of the Trojan War, is not the war itself, but the rage of Achilles. In the 9th year of the war, Achilles had a terrible argument with the leader of the Greek armies, Agamemnon, over a woman. In his pride and fury, Achilles, the greatest warrior, refused to fight. He withdrew his armies and sat in his tent, sulking, while the Greeks began to lose the war. His dearest friend, Patroclus, heartbroken to see their comrades being slaughtered, begged Achilles to let him wear his armor and lead his men into battle. Achilles agreed. Patroclus, wearing the armor of the great hero, turned the tide of the battle, but he was slain by Hector, the prince of Troy. When Achilles learned of his friend's death, his grief was a terrible, all-consuming thing. His rage returned, no longer directed at his own king, but at Hector. He returned to the battlefield, a force of pure, divine-like vengeance, and his rage would change the fate of the war. Fact 70. Hector was the prince of Troy, the eldest son of King Priam, and the greatest warrior on the Trojan side. Unlike Achilles, who was a demigod of pure, unrestrained passion, Hector was a mortal man. He was a loving father, a loyal husband, and the true protector of his city. He did not fight for glory, but for his home and his family. The climax of the Iliad is the great, tragic duel between Hector and Achilles. Hector, knowing he cannot win, still stands and fights the avenging hero. Achilles, in his divine fury, slays him, but his rage is not sated. In a final act of desecration, he ties Hector's body to the back of his chariot and drags it around the walls of Troy, in full view of his grieving wife and parents. This was a terrible sacrilegious act. And it was this final, arrogant act of hubris that sealed Achilles' own doom. Fact 71. For 10 long years, the Greeks laid siege to the great, impenetrable walls of Troy. They could not breach them by force. Finally, the wily and cleverest of all the Greek heroes, Odysseus, devised a plan. It was a plan of pure cunning and deception. The Greeks would pretend to give up. They built a great hollow wooden horse as a supposed offering to the goddess Athena. To ensure their safe voyage home, they then burned their camps and sailed their ships away, just out of sight. The Trojans, overjoyed, believed the war was over. They ignored the warnings of their prophets and dragged the great horse into their city as a trophy. That night, while the Trojans celebrated and slept, Odysseus and a small band of elite warriors who had been hiding inside the horse crept out. They opened the city gates for the Greek army, which had sailed back under the cover of darkness. The city was sacked, burned, and the war was finally and brutally over. Fact 72. Odysseus, the hero of the Trojan War, was the king of Ithaca, known not for his strength, but for his incredible cunning and intelligence. He was the man of many twists and turns. It was his idea for the Trojan horse, and it was his cleverness that helped the Greeks survive. But after the war, his journey home was to become an epic in itself. While the other heroes returned home in weeks or months, Odysseus was cursed. He had angered the god Poseidon by blinding his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. For this, Poseidon swore that Odysseus would suffer, that he would wander the seas for 10 long years, losing all his ships, all his men, and returning to his home a broken, unrecognizable man. His journey home, the Odyssey, is a story of endurance, of wit, and of a desperate longing for home. Fact 73. The Odyssey is the story of Odysseus's 10-year journey home from Troy. It was a journey that took him to the very edges of the known world, into lands of magic and monsters. His crews, battered by storms, were a constant source of trouble, often bringing disaster upon themselves through their own greed and foolishness. He had to navigate a world that had seemingly become a living nightmare, a world controlled by a vengeful god. He would have to face a one-eyed giant, a beautiful witch who turned men into pigs, the hypnotic and deadly song of the sirens, a terrifying six-headed monster, and even a journey into the land of the dead. But through it all, Odysseus never gave up. He used his one great weapon, his mind, to overcome every obstacle, driven by the single, quiet, and desperate need to see his wife and his son again. Fact 74. One of the most famous encounters on Odysseus's journey was with the Cyclops Polyphemus. When Odysseus and his men were shipwrecked on an island, they wandered into a great cave seeking food and shelter. It was the home of Polyphemus, a giant, one-eyed Cyclops and a son of Poseidon. The giant returned, sealed the cave with a massive boulder, and began to eat Odysseus's men, one by one. Odysseus, trapped, devised a plan. He told the giant his name was Nobody. He then gave the giant a skin of strong, undiluted wine. The Cyclops drank it and fell into a deep, drunken sleep. Odysseus and his men took a great wooden stake, sharpened it, and heated it in the fire. They then plunged the burning stake into the giant's single eye, blinding him. The Cyclops roared in agony, and the other Cyclops on the island ran to his cave asking, "Who is hurting you?" Polyphemus, in his pain, could only shout, "Nobody is hurting me. Nobody is killing me." The other giants, thinking he was mad, left. The next morning, as the blind Cyclops let his sheep out to pasture, Odysseus and his men escaped by clinging to the bellies of the great rams. Fact 75e. On his journey, Odysseus came to the island of Aea, the home of the beautiful and dangerous enchantress, Circe. She was a goddess of magic, the daughter of the sun god Helios. She welcomed his scouting party into her palace and offered them a feast. But the food was laced with her magic, and as they ate, she tapped them with her wand and transformed them all into pigs, locking them in a sty. Only one man escaped to warn Odysseus. The hero went to confront the witch, but on the way, he was met by the god Hermes. Hermes gave him a magical herb, moly, which would make him immune to Circe's spells. When Odysseus arrived, he drank her potion, but he did not change. Circe, terrified and impressed, fell in love with him. He and his men ended up staying on her island for a whole year, living in luxury as her lovers and guests, before she finally gave him the magical advice he needed to continue his journey home. Fact 76. Circe warned Odysseus that his next trial would be a trial of the mind. He had to sail past the island of the sirens, creatures who were part woman, part bird. Their song was so beautiful, so magical, and so irresistible that it lured sailors to their doom. Any man who heard their song would lose all thought of home, of family, and of life itself, and would crash his ship upon the rocks of their island, where they would die, listening. Odysseus, in his infinite curiosity, wanted to be the only man to hear the song and live. He followed Circe's advice. He took beeswax and plugged the ears of all his sailors so they could not hear. Then, he ordered them to tie him tightly to the mast of the ship. He commanded them that no matter what he did, no matter how much he begged or threatened, they were not to untie him. As they sailed past, he heard the song. It was a song of perfect, heartbreaking beauty, promising him all the knowledge in the world. He screamed, he wept, he begged to be untied. But his deaf crew just rode on until they were safely past, and the hero, having heard the divine, was cut free, trembling. Fact 77. After the sirens, Odysseus faced his most impossible choice. He had to sail his ship through a narrow strait, and on either side of the strait, a monster lived. He had to choose which one to face. On one side was Charybdis, a great sea monster that was more of a natural force. 3 times a day she would suck down the sea in a massive, inescapable whirlpool, and 3 times a day she would spit it back out. To sail near her was to risk the entire ship and all his men. On the other side was Scylla, a terrifying creature with 6 long serpentine necks, each one ending in a snapping dog's head lined with triple rows of shark's teeth. She lived high in a cave and would snatch sailors from the decks of passing ships. Odysseus, on Circe's grim advice, chose to sail closer to Scylla. He knew that to face Charybdis was to risk everything, while to face Scylla was to accept a certain but limited loss. As they passed, he averted his eyes, and the monster snatched 6 of his best men, their screams echoing in the air, the most tragic moment of his entire journey. Fact 78. After 20 long years of war and wandering, Odysseus finally returned to his home, the island of Ithaca. He arrived alone, his ships and crew long gone, washed up on the shore as a beggar. He found his palace in disarray. It was filled with a mob of arrogant suitors, all of them trying to force his faithful wife Penelope to declare him dead and marry one of them, so they could steal his kingdom. With the help of the goddess Athena, Odysseus remained in disguise, a beggar in his own home. He was forced to endure the taunts of the suitors, recognized only by his old, dying dog Argos and his childhood nurse. He waited patiently for his moment. Penelope, still faithful, declared a contest. She would marry the man who could string her husband's great bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe handles. All the suitors tried, and all failed. Then the beggar stepped up, strung the bow with ease, and his revenge began. Fact 79. Penelope was a hero in her own right, a match for her husband in cunning and endurance. For the 10 years Odysseus was wandering, she was besieged by suitors who ate his food, drank his wine, and demanded her hand. To keep them at bay, she used her mind. She told them she could not marry until she had finished weaving a funeral shroud for her father-in-law, Laertes. She was a picture of a grieving, dutiful wife. By day, she would sit at her loom, weaving the great, intricate tapestry. But every night, in the quiet, secret darkness of her room, she would go to the loom and, by torchlight, she would unweave everything she had done that day. For 3 years, this trick kept her free. It was a perfect metaphor for her struggle, a task of creation and destruction, a way of holding on to hope by undoing the past, all to buy her just a little more time, waiting for a husband she was not even sure was still alive. Fact 80. The story of Oedipus is one of the darkest tragedies, a story of how fate is inescapable. It was prophesied to King Laius of Thebes that his son would one day kill him and marry his own mother, Queen Jocasta. To avoid this, when the baby was born, his ankles were pinned together, and he was left on a mountain to die. But he was found by a shepherd and raised as the Prince of Corinth. Oedipus, when he grew up, heard the same prophecy, and, believing the king and queen of Corinth were his parents, he fled his home to protect them. On the road, he got into an argument with a stranger in a chariot, and, in a fit of rage, he killed him. He arrived at the city of Thebes, which was being terrorized by the Sphinx. He solved the Sphinx's riddle, saved the city, and was made its king, marrying the widowed Queen Jocasta. The man he had killed on the road, of course, was his true father, King Laius, and the woman he married was his mother. The prophecy had been fulfilled. Fact 81. The riddle of the Sphinx is one of the most famous puzzles in history. The Sphinx was a monstrous creature, with the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and the head of a woman. She sat on a rock outside the city of Thebes and preyed on its travelers. She would pose a single riddle to all who passed, and if they could not answer, she would devour them. The city was in despair, until Oedipus, the stranger, arrived. The riddle was this: what is the creature that walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? Oedipus, a man of great intelligence, thought for a moment and gave the answer. It is man. A man crawls on all 4s as a baby, the morning, walks on 2 feet in adulthood, the noon, and in his old age, the evening, he uses a cane, his 3rd leg. The Sphinx, defeated at last, shrieked and threw herself from the rock to her death. The city was saved. Fact 82. Antigone was the daughter of Oedipus, and her story is a tragedy of moral courage. After Oedipus discovered his terrible truth, he blinded himself and went into exile, where he died. His 2 sons, Eteocles and Polynices, fought over the throne of Thebes and killed each other in battle. The new king, Creon, declared that Eteocles would be buried with honors, but that Polynices, who had attacked the city, was a traitor, and his body was to be left unburied, to be eaten by dogs and vultures. This was a terrible, sacrilegious decree. Antigone, his sister, was horrified. She believed that the laws of the gods, which demanded a proper burial, were higher than the laws of the king. In a quiet, brave act of defiance, she crept out at night and sprinkled her brother's body with dust, performing the sacred funeral rites. She was caught, and for her crime, Creon sentenced her to be buried alive in a tomb. She chose her conscience over her life, a timeless story of civil disobedience. Fact 83. King Midas was a foolish but kind king who one day did a great favor for the god Dionysus. The god, pleased, offered to grant him any one wish. Midas, who was obsessed with wealth, did not hesitate. He asked that everything he touched would turn to pure gold. Dionysus, knowing this was a foolish wish, granted it. At first, Midas was ecstatic. He touched a twig, and it became gold. He touched a stone, and it became gold. He ran through his palace, turning everything into a glittering, lifeless statue. But the horror of his wish soon became clear. He sat down to eat, and his food turned to solid, indase, bile metal. He went to drink, and the wine thickened into molten gold in his cup. He was starving, his great wealth a useless, terrible mockery. The final, awful tragedy came when his beloved daughter ran to embrace him, and he turned her too into a cold, golden statue. Fact 84. Midas, horrified by his gift, prayed to Dionysus to take it back. The god, pitying the foolish king, told him to go to the river Pactolus and wash his hands. Midas did so, and as he plunged his hands into the water, the curse flowed out of him. The power of the golden touch was washed away, and the sands of the river, it was said, became rich with gold forever after. Midas, humbled, became a changed man, a lover of the forest and the simple things. But his foolishness was not quite cured. One day, he found himself judging a musical contest between the god Apollo and the satyr Pan. Pan played his rustic, wild pipes, and Apollo played his beautiful, harmonious lyre. Midas, a man of simple tastes, declared Pan the winner. Apollo, enraged that any mortal would be so foolish as to prefer a satyr's pipes to his divine music, punished Midas by giving him the ears of a donkey, a permanent, secret, and shameful reminder of his own foolishness. Fact 85. Orpheus was the greatest musician in the world. He was the son of a muse, and when he played his lyre and sang, his music was so beautiful that it charmed the very stones of the earth. Wild beasts would lie down peacefully at his feet, and the trees themselves would bend their branches to listen. He fell deeply in love with a wood nymph named Eurydice, and they were married. But on their wedding day, a tragedy occurred. Eurydice, while walking in a field, was bitten by a poisonous snake and died, her soul descending to the underworld. Orpheus was consumed by a grief so profound that he made a decision no mortal had ever dared. He would go to the land of the dead himself, and with the power of his music, he would bring her back. Fact 86. Orpheus took his lyre and journeyed down into the dark kingdom of Hades. He played his music, and the grim ferryman Charon, moved to tears, carried him across the Styx. The three-headed dog Cerberus lay down, tamed by the sound. He played for the shades of the dead, who wept. He finally stood before the thrones of Hades and Persephone, and sang of his love and his loss. His music was so beautiful that even the cold heart of Hades, the king of the dead, was moved. He agreed to let Eurydice go, on one single, absolute condition. Orpheus was to walk in front of his wife, and as they journeyed back to the world of light, he was not, under any circumstances, to turn around and look at her. Not until they were both fully in the sunlight. Orpheus agreed. He began the long, silent walk, his wife's faint footsteps behind him. He reached the sunlight, stepped out into the world, but in his desperate human love, in the final, agonizing moment, he turned to see if she was there. She was. But she was still in the shadow of the cave. She gave him a faint, sorrowful look and was pulled back, forever, into the darkness. Fact 87. Narcissus was a young man of impossible, breathtaking beauty. He was so beautiful that everyone who saw him, nymph and mortal alike, fell instantly in love with him. But Narcissus was arrogant and cold. He scorned all their advances, his heart untouched. One of the nymphs who loved him was named Echo. She had been cursed by Hera so that she could not speak her own thoughts, but could only repeat the last words of what another had said. She followed Narcissus, her heart breaking, unable to tell him of her love. When he finally rejected her, she faded away in sorrow until nothing was left of her but her voice, the echo in the mountains. The gods, seeing Narcissus's cruelty, decided to punish him. He was led to a perfectly still, clear spring. He leaned over to drink, and for the first time, he saw his own reflection. He was so captivated by the beautiful face in the water that he fell hopelessly, tragically in love with it. He could not leave, he could not touch it, and he sat there, staring at his own image, until he wasted away and died. Fact 88. The wild, natural places of the Greek world were not empty. They were filled with a vast and beautiful array of spirits, known as the nymphs. These were divine female spirits, the daughters of the gods or the rivers, and they were tied to the very life force of the natural world. They were the personification of nature's gentle, nurturing, and sometimes wild spirit. There were many kinds. The dryads and hamadryads were the nymphs of the trees, and to cut down a sacred tree was to kill the nymph within. The oreads were the nymphs of the mountains, who lived in the high, lonely peaks. The naiads were the nymphs of fresh water, who inhabited every spring, fountain, and river, their presence making the water clean and life-giving. And the nereids were the nymphs of the sea, the 50 beautiful daughters of the old sea god Nereus, who played in the waves and helped sailors in distress. Fact 89. The companions of the god Dionysus were the wild, chaotic, and joyous spirits of the forest. The most famous of these were the satyrs. They were depicted as having the upper body of a man and the legs, horns, and tail of a goat. They were lovers of wine, of music, and of dancing. They lived a life of pure, unrestrained indulgence, chasing nymphs through the woods and playing their rustic reed pipes. They were not evil, but they were wild, representing the primal, animalistic, and unrestrained side of male nature. Their Roman counterparts were the fauns, who were slightly more gentle. The leader of the satyrs was the old, wise, and perpetually drunk Silenus, the tutor and loyal companion of Dionysus, who was said to possess all the secret wisdom of the world, though he would only share it if he was caught and forced to. Fact 90. The centaurs were another race of hybrid creatures, but they were far more dangerous than the satyrs. They had the upper body and head of a man, fused to the full four-legged body of a horse. This union symbolized a deep internal conflict. The civilized, rational human mind, trapped in a powerful, animalistic body. For the most part, the centaurs were savage, violent, and lawless. They were creatures of base instinct, prone to drunkenness and brutality. Their most famous story tells of them getting drunk at a wedding and attempting to carry off the bride and all the other women. However, there was one great, profound exception to this rule. This was Chiron. Chiron was a centaur, but he was wise, gentle, and immortal. He was a master of medicine, of music, and of archery. And he became the great, quiet teacher of almost all the Greek heroes, including Achilles, Jason, and Heracles. Fact 91. The Muses were the 9 goddesses of the arts, the sciences, and all divine inspiration. They were the daughters of Zeus, the king, and Mnemosyne, the Titaness of memory. This parentage was deeply symbolic. It meant that all human creativity was the child of divine power and of memory. The Muses lived on Mount Helicon, and their leader was the god Apollo. Each of the 9 sisters had her own specific domain. Calliope was the muse of epic poetry. Clio was the muse of history. Erato was the muse of love poetry. Euterpe was the muse of music. Melpomene was the muse of tragedy, and her sister Thalia was the muse of comedy. Polyhymnia was the muse of hymns. Terpsichore was the muse of dance, and Urania was the muse of astronomy. An artist or a poet would never begin their work without first invoking the muses, praying for them to sing in me, as all human creativity was seen as a divine, quiet whisper from these 9 sisters. Fact 92. The most powerful, and perhaps most feared, beings in the entire cosmos were not the gods, but the Moirai, the 3 fates. They were 3 ancient, somber sisters who controlled the destiny of every mortal from the moment they were born to the moment they died. Even Zeus, the king of the gods, could not overrule their decisions. The first sister was Clotho, the spinner. She was the one who spun the thread of life, the delicate strand that began at birth. The second sister was Lachesis, the allotter. She was the one who measured the thread, deciding the length, the quality, and all the twists and turns of a person's life. The third, and most feared, sister was Atropos, the inflexible. She was the one who, when a life's measure was complete, would come with her dreadful shears and cut the thread, ending the life. They were the ultimate, quiet, and impersonal force of the universe, the embodiment of an unchangeable, inescapable destiny. Fact 93. The Furies, or the Erinyes, were among the most ancient and terrifying forces in the Greek cosmos. They were born from the first great act of violence, springing from the drops of blood that fell to the earth when Kronos unmanned his father, Ouranos. They were chthonic, earthy spirits of vengeance. They were not concerned with ordinary crimes, but with the most sacred and terrible violations against the natural order, the shedding of family blood. If a son killed his mother, or a mother her child, the Furies would be awakened. They were depicted as hags with snakes for hair and blood dripping from their eyes, and they would pursue the guilty party relentlessly, driving them mad with guilt and terror. They were the personification of a guilty conscience, a primal, inescapable justice that existed long before the orderly laws of Zeus and Mount Olympus. Fact 94. The Chimera was one of the most monstrous creatures in all of mythology, a true abomination of nature. It was a child of the monster parents, Typhon and Echidna. It was a terrifying, fire-breathing hybrid. It had the head and body of a lion, but from its back, a second head, that of a goat, emerged, and its tail was a living, venomous serpent. This grotesque combination made it a formidable foe, a creature that could attack from all angles at once. It ravaged the lands of Lycia, its fiery breath scorching the earth and destroying all crops and cattle. It seemed an unbeatable foe, a creature of pure, chaotic evil, until a hero, Bellerophon, was sent to slay it. Fact 95. Bellerophon was a great hero of Corinth, second only, perhaps, to Heracles. His greatest feat was the slaying of the Chimera. But he knew he could not face such a monster on foot. He needed a mount that was as magical as the beast itself. He prayed to Athena, and she helped him find and tame the winged horse, Pegasus. With a special golden bridle, Bellerophon became the master of the flying horse. He rode Pegasus into the sky, giving him an advantage the Chimera did not have. He flew above the monster, just out of reach of its fiery breath and snapping claws, and shot it with arrows. In his final, clever move, he attached a lump of lead to the end of his spear and thrust it into the monster's fiery throat. The Chimera's own fire melted the lead, which trickled down and sealed its insides, killing it. But Bellerophon's story is a tragedy. His victory made him arrogant, and he tried to fly Pegasus to Mount Olympus to join the gods. Zeus, angered by this hubris, sent a gadfly to sting Pegasus, who bucked the hero. Bellerophon fell, a broken and humbled man, from the sky. Fact 96. Sisyphus was a king of Corinth, and he was the most cunning and deceitful man of his age. He was so clever that he managed to cheat death, not once, but twice. First, he tricked Thanatos, the god of death, and chained him up so that for a time no one on earth could die. Then, after being taken to the Underworld, he tricked Hades into letting him return to the world of the living, promising to come back. He, of course, broke his promise, and lived to a ripe old age. But when he finally died, the gods, enraged at his hubris, devised a special, eternal punishment for him in Tartarus. His punishment was one of complete, agonizing futility. He was condemned to roll a massive boulder up a steep hill. He would strain with all his might, and just as he was about to reach the very top, the boulder would slip from his grasp and roll all the way back down to the bottom. Sisyphus would then have to walk down and begin all over again, forever. Fact 97. Tantalus was another king who was condemned to an eternal, specialized torment in Tartarus. His crime was one of terrible hubris against the gods. He was a son of Zeus and was so favored that he was allowed to dine with the gods on Olympus. But he grew arrogant. He stole the gods' nectar and ambrosia to give to mortals. And in his most horrific act, he decided to test the gods' omniscience. He killed his own son, Pelops, cooked him into a stew, and served him to the gods at a banquet. The gods, horrified, recoiled. They reassembled the boy and brought him back to life. But Tantalus's punishment was sealed. He was placed in a pool of clear, cool water. Just above his head hung a fruit tree, its branches laden with ripe, juicy fruit. But when he bent to drink, the water would recede. And when he reached up to eat, the wind would blow the branches just out of his grasp. He was to stand there forever, tantalized, surrounded by food and water that he could never, ever have. Fact 98. The Amazons were a mythical nation of warrior women who lived on the edges of the known world, near the Black Sea. They were a society that revered strength, independence, and the arts of war. They lived separately from men, raising only their daughters, and were famed for their skill as archers, and for being the first to fight on horseback. They were not seen as evil, but as a force of nature, a society that was the polar opposite of the male-dominated Greek world. Their queens, like Hippolyta and Penthesilea, were figures of great power and nobility. They feature in many of the great hero myths, often as worthy adversaries. Heracles had to retrieve the girdle of Queen Hippolyta. Theseus fought and married an Amazon. And in the Trojan War, the Amazon queen Penthesilea arrived to fight for Troy, where she was slain in a tragic and respectful duel with Achilles. Fact 99. The rule of Zeus and the Olympians was not to go unchallenged. After the Titans were defeated, Gaia, the earth, was still angry. She gave birth to a new race of children, the Gigantes, or giants. These were not just large men, but monstrous, powerful beings, born to overthrow the new gods. This sparked the last great cosmic war, the Gigantomachy, the War of the Giants. A prophecy stated that the gods could not defeat the giants alone. They would need the help of a mortal hero. This hero was Heracles. The war was a terrible, brutal conflict that raged across the world. Each god fought their counterpart. Zeus struck them down with lightning, Poseidon buried them under islands, and Heracles, the mortal hero, delivered the final killing blows. The victory of the Olympians and Heracles over the giants represented the final, ultimate triumph of civilization and order over the primal, chaotic forces of the earth. Fact 100. And so we end where we began, in the quiet of a story. These myths of the Greeks, of chaos and titans, of flawed gods and all too human heroes, are more than just ancient tales. They are the origin story of a way of thinking. They are the West's first, great attempt to explain the world, not just the lightning and the sea, but the quiet, internal worlds of love, jealousy, ambition, grief, and the terrible, beautiful burden of being human. They are metaphors that we still use, stories that we still tell in new forms. They are the quiet, foundational dreams of our culture, and they remind us that even in a world of science and certainty, we are all, still, trying to answer the same ancient riddles, all of us just looking for a little bit of light in the dark.